Coming at you live with Mr. Styled Pigeon. Hey, my dude, what's new with you?
Oh, honestly, actually, not a whole lot because I've been trying to practice what we're talking about today a little bit. And recently I got very burnt out on doing some stuff. And I'm not fully back yet. So um, right now we're focused on art, just released Space Pigeons on Gamma IO, and super happy with that art and the way it turned out. And then I've been playing around with some character design using some AI softwares and whatnot,
That's
and
the one you're wearing now,
putting out
right?
t-shirts. Yeah, so this is the one that I'm wearing right now. They actually look really good. So I used to
Yeah.
sell apparel, and I'm actually really pleased with this particular brand of t-shirt. It's softer than the Bitcoin t-shirts. The Bitcoin t-shirts are like your thick, like sturdy
hmm
cotton t-shirts.
Which is what
This is
I'm
a
wearing right
different.
now.
Yeah, so the Bitcoin stuff is really cool, but I've been having fun with these character tees, and
Yeah.
in the product descriptions, there's actually you like the full story of the character itself. Um,
Super cool.
yeah, so that's
That's awesome.
it's just a fun like little art project. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, go check it out. Maybe it's something you want to rock. Always easy to get, or it's never been easy for me before to get like cool looking graphic tees in the style that I want.
Yep.
It's always like a band name or something, and I don't
Yeah.
really,
I feel
I
you.
don't subscribe to any bands,
Yeah.
so I'm like, I just want a generic character that's like, oh yeah, this is a weird, cool looking T-shirt. That's all I
Yeah.
want, and so trying
Yep.
to provide it.
Cool, man. That's awesome. So styledpigeon.com, if you want some of that merch, the Bitcoin t-shirts or the character tees, go pull that up. Yeah, so today we're talking avoiding burnout in the Bitcoin space. Very appropriate. We're going to talk about things that we've been going through, little tips and tricks that we've been using to try and unplug some, either successfully or not so successfully. But first, I'd like to give a shout out to our sponsor, Roundly X. They can actually help burnout because they help automate your dollar cost averaging strategy where you don't have to think about it. Roundly X is a simple to use app that allows you to round up your purchases into Bitcoin and other digital assets anytime you make a purchase. It helps you build wealth safely and conveniently over time, like I said, where you don't have to think about it. And it helped me pay off my Subaru during the pandemic. And for a limited time, whenever you sign up with a referral code, which our show gingerly is a referral code, you get 15 bucks of Bitcoin. And then you can use your own referral code to refer friends for another 15 bucks of Bitcoin. So good opportunity to start stacking some sats there if you haven't yet. But without further ado, let's dive in. Could you roll the film for us, please, Nick? Awesome. Well, I got to say, this week has been nuts for me. Whenever you proposed that we do a session about avoiding burnout in the Bitcoin space, my first thought was, wow, that's timely. This past week has been the biggest growth push that NeoSwap has had. We set an all-time high record for attendance, which is great. But man,
Yeah, that's fantastic.
I'm so wiped out.
Yeah, so on my end, it's actually been like not even just crypto; it's been tech in general, and I know that's ultimately true for you as well because of your involvement in AI.
Right.
But I'm getting to the point where it's like I just don't have enough hours in the day to pursue everything that I want to pursue, and once that gets rolling, then I start not enjoying the things that were fun. And for me, throw some chronic depression in the mix, and it's like we'll we'll just wing it and figure it out. So
Yeah.
ultimately, John and I want to give y'all, you know, what we think about this topic and some of the strategies that we use to try and be able to continue doing instead of reverting to that consumer status, and keep pushing and keep moving forward in a sustainable way that we don't end up with hypertension because we're driving ourselves into the ground.
Yeah. 100%.
So where do you want to start with that?
Well, so we have a cool little outline here that I'm gonna loosely follow. But something that kind of hit my head before we even dive into talking about crypto specifically is just, I mean, you mentioned having chronic depression. I never really struggled with depression until the pandemic, and then
Mm,
like even shortly before the pandemic, 2018 during the bear market, it started hitting me pretty hard, and then just kind of kept going. And I think a lot of people right now, whether they know it or not, are struggling with isolation and burnout of a particular kind because of how difficult the pandemic has made relating to other people. And for me, my escape was actually through the crypto Twitter community, which we
mm,
can talk about later. um, one of my encouragements to anybody that's watching is if you have online internet friends, anonymous or not, you should meet them in person because it's extremely helpful. But we can talk about that down the road. The first thing that's important to point out, like in crypto, is that crypto doesn't sleep. Like the stock market closes at normal business hours, but crypto's 24/7. And at the very beginning, that sets us back if we're in here full time by quite a lot. Being able to just put down the phone or walk away from the PC is a lot more difficult when the market doesn't close.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's on top of the tech side of things, right? Because tech moves unbelievably fast. And I'm actually new to this, right? Because like 4 years ago, I was still building hiking trails,
Hmm.
right? Like I was in the woods, like no cell phone reception, no nothing. I was
Good stuff.
just, you know, out in the middle of the woods playing with rocks and trees. And so burnout actually still happens doing that, right? Like
For sure.
there's something about burnout that comes from uh what would you call this? Like repetition. And I
Hmm.
I think it has something to do with the orienting instinct that happens in our brains evolutionarily. Like we we need to know where we've been, where we're at, and where we're headed, and that actually activates your serotonin systems and helps you stay happy because you can see yourself making progress. That's one of the big reasons that I encourage being a doer instead of a consumer.
Hmm.
If you're just consuming material, then what that does is it amps up the dopamine supply in your brain and also makes that dopamine cycle a lot shorter. So you
Right.
constantly have to be watching that next episode or like, clicking on the next video that looks interesting. What you'll find is at a certain point, you'll be scrolling through, your YouTube feed going like, why does none of this seem appealing to me? And it's
Right.
because that dopamine threshold is already so high. It's like, then you
Can't
move
go any
to
higher.
watching porn all the time or something.
Right.
And it's like, okay, I can't bump up against that dopamine ceiling anymore.
Right.
Which obviously, we're talking about depression. That's really what depression is in a lot of ways. Is or as Jim Carrey described it, your brain's tired of playing this character in the game.
Hmm.
Um, it's like we've been doing this and it doesn't seem to be going anywhere. And
Yeah.
so your brain starts being like, hey, like maybe we should pivot here and do something else. So that's where I think burnout sort of comes from. In addition to, like you said, crypto makes it even worse because it's 24/7. Nothing ever
Yep.
stops. Everything's already moving. Can't tell you how many times I know you experience this even more than I do, but it's like wake up to the DMs on Twitter being like, you have 54 new messages. And it's like,
Yeah.
how is everyone still awake? I don't understand. Like I've been hearing from these people all day and they were still messaging me throughout the night. When do people sleep, John?
No, I asked that too. I mean, working at NeoSwap, I wonder that. And what's crazy is like working on a decentralized team is awesome, but that also means that yeah, when you're asleep, they're awake and that you're behind, because you're
Yeah.
sleeping. And there's nothing you can do about it except for sleep less and then you kill yourself. So that's not the goal. That's what we're here to talk about. And I think like in terms of timing, this episode is extremely timely. I've been thinking about it ever since you suggested it because if you're a newbie in this space, you probably have like you've been having a lot of like excitement, like oh man, Bitcoin's going back up from the low teens. We're close to 30, things are feeling good, and then it starts going sideways, right? And then you're like, how long am I going to have to wait? This is ridiculous. And if you're a more experienced veteran, you've been around for a little bit longer, you know that it's very likely that we could crash back down to the low teens here soon. And that's when you need to be most prepared for dealing with this type of burnout. Because if you're pushing hard when things are going sideways, you're just convincing yourself, I just need to make it another day. It's going to go up the next day. It's fine. We got to keep hustling. We're going to make this money. And then it crashes. You've fooled yourself into a corner where depression is extremely easy to just fall into and stay into. And so I think coming into your day to day with some context of I can't control the market. The market's 24/7. We might go sideways for the next 6 or 8 months, and I got to be prepared for that. Being
Hmm.
realistic about what the day to day experience looks like is important. Um, so I think like the next part on the outline that we had here is just recognizing the signs of burnout. And you said you've kind of been there yourself in the last little bit. What does that look like for you?
So the number one sign of the fact that I'm starting to burn out for me personally is that lack of interest.
Mm.
When I start sitting down to do project work and I'm like, oh God, this feels like a slog.
Yep.
That's when I start going, wait, like this used to be a ton of fun. Why is my brain not wanting to do this anymore? Um, and I want to start talking about solutions already, but uh, Nick, thanks for pulling this up for us. This is actually really helpful because the fatigue part is something that I'm not very good at detecting. I'm one of those people who's just kind of low energy. Like I'm tired all of the time.
Hmm.
So when I wake up and I'm like, oh, I'm exhausted. I don't think I'm exhausted. I go, okay, it's another day.
It's
Like
another day.
it's totally
Yeah.
normal. So that's not a big one for me to like use as a red flag. The red
Hmm.
flag for me is always the interest stuff, and also I'll notice my fuse gets a lot shorter
Yeah.
because my day job is in management,
Hmm.
and so like some days I'll show up and somebody needs me to help teach them how to rename a file on Windows or something silly, and which is fine. They're not familiar with everything. I mean, they work with computers. In my opinion, they should be competent. But um, sometimes that doesn't happen that way. We've got a 69-year-old woman working for us. It's like I don't expect her to be overly familiar with AI
Right.
tech, right?
Yeah.
So I'll notice with those conversations, it's very obvious when I'm at the end of my rope because instead of being like, oh, okay, well, that's actually really easy. Here, let me show you how to do that real quick. My reaction becomes like, oh, heavy sigh. Like,
Yeah.
um, okay. And it takes me like a couple extra steps. So when I start experiencing that, and there is a plug for mindfulness here. Um, I've been kind of a psychonaut since I was a kid, and so I try to pay attention to my mind and what's going on with it very often. That's
Hmm.
something that's really important to me because I consider my intellect to be one of my greatest assets as a person,
Right.
as one of the areas that I can offer the most value from. And so I pay attention to it very carefully, and you should too, because like your brain runs the show.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
anyway, that's some of the red flags for me. What about you? Is there anything in particular, or are you
Yeah.
just
Yeah. No, we're
pushing
very
through?
similar on the fuse part.
Mm,
Like I just find that I don't deal with things as well, and like I find myself getting really tense, lots of muscle tension for sure. Um,
oh, interesting.
that triggers headaches sometimes, so that'll happen. And then I mean, you know how I am. I love or I have to multitask pretty hard as a mainstay of my job, and I find myself not being able to multitask beyond like one or two tasks
Mm,
at a time. And I've gotten to the point where now I start realizing, oh hey, like I need to take some steps. But to be honest, I was so bad at recognizing signs of burnout that I had to basically put in stops in my week of being like, okay, I'm doing this every single week or every single day, whatever it is, because I know that if I don't, I'm going to let myself fall into these habits that I don't recognize until someone else comes to me and says, "Yo, Purple, what's wrong with you? Like, why are you are you okay?" kind of thing. And then I'd self-examine after that. So,
gotcha.
yeah.
Well, so ultimately, I think the actionable thing is there are red flags, and it's very important to recognize those red flags. They're going to be different for everybody. Like my dad gets burnt out, and the way that you know that he's burnt out is he starts getting short with my mom, and it's like, and she bites back, right? Like
Yeah.
she's not a pushover. She'd be like, excuse me, like you want to run that by me again?
Yeah.
um and but they have these conversations, they work it out, and I think that's one really beautiful in a relationship, to be able to actually communicate. But um the thing that is happening is they're going, oh hey, we've recognized this threshold, and when we hit this threshold, one of a few things needs to happen. Either this person needs alone time to refocus and regain, which you should probably build into your week anyway,
Yep.
or maybe this person needs some more, not, I was going to say more intimate time, I mean like quality time, not
Yeah.
necessarily anything more intimate than that. um though that's good
Maybe
for your
that's
health as
needed though.
well.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe
Yeah, I
that is
mean,
needed. Blood pressure and all that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's good for your cardiovascular system.
Yeah.
So, there's that kind of stuff as well. And then sometimes it's a matter of, for me, just switching up what the project is. Like you, I think I have a fair bit of attention deficit, as the medical system likes to call it.
Hmm.
Personally, I don't think it's actually an attention deficit. I think it's a substance deficit. Um, where like I don't, if I'm not challenged, I will quit.
Me too.
um I'm out of here if it's
Yep.
if it's not intellectually stimulating. I will lose focus.
Yep.
So that's not my fault, that's the fault of the world around me, but it's still my responsibility to deal with. So
Right.
I like to switch things up. That's why if you go to styledpigeon.com, you'll see there's it seems like an ADHD person's nightmare. Like it's um
A lot
it's
of stuff.
definitely
Yeah.
scattered. It's all over the place. And that's just the way that I work. That's the way that I like to do things. So I stick with it and try and just continue to offer as much value as possible.
Yeah.
Um so again, that's one of the solutions. I'm skipping ahead again.
No, that's great.
Please steal the
We're
reins from
solution
me.
oriented. um, that's who we are. No, but so I, this the outline that I made with AI is like only so good. So yeah, we're kind of skipping all over the place. But I think I want to come back to the fact that crypto is 24/7. It's
Okay.
bad, but also it's pretty dang good because when I started getting desperate back in 2018, I thank goodness bitched on Twitter about it. And that was like my only place that I would actually say anything about struggling with this particular issue. And as it turns out, there are a whole lot of people like us in the Bitcoin space. There's lots of high
Yeah.
performers, there's lots of ADHD crazy people, and there's lots of people that struggle with depression and burnout. And thankfully, one of my online anonymous friends was like, dude, like, let's just get together and talk about it. And you had the pleasure of meeting this person recently. And so you can imagine how a fantastic thing that was for me to have some random dude off of Twitter be like, hey, I've been
Yeah.
there. Let's meet up. Let's talk. Let's, like start a friendship. And some of my best relationships now are literally people off of the Bluebird app that I met because, we're just there to support each other. We mention all the time on this show, Bitcoin changes people. And it's not just financially, it's like from a health perspective. And so like for me, one of the things we can move towards solutions if you want, like unplugging is something that's really important. I've realized because I'm not a dev, right? I'm not somebody that's building in that sense. I build networks, I build communities, I build social like networks. And so that requires a level of like focus and being plugged in. And so to be able to get your mind out of that to help the dopamine levels, like you said, I have to just put my phone down on the weekends. And that's part of the reason why you have so much trouble reaching me with like VR and gaming is because my phone is just away from me.
Yeah.
Because if I have it, I'm going to start working, and like I even have some people that have my phone number that text me to be like, yo, you could like, are you unplugging kind of thing? Like, because they know that if I get too deep into it, I'm going to end up a mess. Um, so yeah, I think accountability is good, but it's not just like what I think a lot of us knew as accountability when we were growing up. It was like a bad thing, right? I don't know. At least to me, it was like get a partner to make you feel guilty or whatever. But for me, it was like a
Yeah.
friend who understands what I'm going through that can push me the right way.
Yeah. And I think that's a like a Southern or Protestant Christian thing.
Probably, yeah,
Is so like I have some issues with certain principles in organized religion, and I don't think that everyone has the experience of accountability that way. And I actually
no,
didn't have
definitely
the
not.
experience of accountability that way. Um, because to me accountability was like I can't do something on my own fully,
Mhm.
and I'm fully aware of this. I'm not a disciplined person. That's an area of my life that I really suffer in. Is I'm not good at making myself do things because my philosophy in life has always been do what you want,
Right.
and if you want it bad enough you'll do it. That has always made sense to me. That was before I fully understood dopamine addiction. um, or not fully understood, understood it as well as I do now. So the wants can be manipulated, and therefore I'm still working on this whole idea of discipline, being like I'm going to wake up at this time. And actually, Setsus is a big inspiration on this because Homeboy never stops. I
Yeah.
don't know how. I mean, I don't know how he does it. Um, it's like I've got 30 minutes to play 18 holes of VR every Wednesday night. You're like, dude,
And that's all he does. Yeah, that's the
yeah,
break.
and that's it. That's for the week. And so that actually leads me to, okay, well, Set Zeus doesn't burn out, but he works all of the time. So what's his secret, right?
Yeah.
And to me, the secret seems to be what you're doing with your time and whether or not it's actually helpful and productive.
Mm,
Because so I spend a lot of time learning right now, and that's a very difficult stage for me as
yeah.
far as burnout,
Can
because
vouch.
I don't have like a go-to lesson plan or anything. So I could
Right.
be more organized about it, and that would help a lot. But when it comes to doing art, I sit down and I crank out the art, and I feel great about it afterwards.
Hmm.
If I were able to structure my life around art and thought and philosophy and the weird rantings in my head and design, that would actually, I would be able to work 16 hours a day without thinking twice.
Right.
Um, because I would just be in it and I'd be happy with that. So reference back to Jim Carrey, and maybe you're tired of playing the character that you're playing. I work in pharmaceutical sales. Managing a pharmaceutical sales team at the level that I do is horrific. It's so difficult, and burnout is right at the tip of the spear every single day. Like,
Yeah.
it's absolutely horrible.
Yeah.
I've got to get out of that industry at some point, which hopefully nobody from work's watching the show. Because I definitely know about it. We'll see if my boss says anything on Monday.
Yeah.
But
Dang,
it's
dude, come on. Let's pull some punches.
well, it's like it is what it is,
No, yeah,
and
totally.
I'm
Everyone
not
knows.
trying to
Yeah.
continue a long-standing career in sales management,
Yeah,
um,
totally.
especially in an industry that I don't really care about. So making those steps and moving forward is what keeps me from burning out. And just like we were talking about on Discord recently, that also requires some degree of focus.
Yeah.
So organization and focus, I think, are very, very important when you're trying to prevent burnout, or when you're trying to create, and this is really what it is, right? Is create a sustainable lifestyle. Burnout
Right.
comes from having a lifestyle that's not sustainable.
Yeah.
So if you can structure your lifestyle and be very organized about that, you create a schedule and then stick to that schedule, and then maybe a month down the road, you go, okay, this schedule isn't working. Like, this is a pain
Yeah,
point
tweak
for
it.
me. Yeah, tweak it and keep moving forward. Just don't do it every day. Like, give it
Yeah.
at least a couple of weeks. You can do anything for a couple of weeks. You'll be fine.
Mhm. Yeah.
So as long as you make sure you eat.
Yeah, I know that is actually something that's really important, and I want people to hear who are watching this show. If you're in crypto, you're probably tempted not to eat because it's so easy to just crank through the day. But on it, like honestly, I had to have Cal Toro, my buddy, text me and be like, "Creasy, it's noon. You have to go get something to eat." And like that helped me at least be like, "Oh yeah, like Cal's gonna text me. I need to make sure that I'm doing something." And that at least got me into a habit of eating food at a certain time of day. And it sounds
Yeah.
ridiculous, but as an adult, we have to put these basic boundaries on ourselves to make sure that we stay healthy. Um, and I
Yeah.
think, go
Sorry,
ahead.
go ahead. I'll keep going. So I was in an interesting state of mind a few weeks back, and something occurred to me, and this is crazy to me because, um, as a 33-year-old, this is the first time this has ever really occurred to me in this way. It's the progression of life. We don't think about what life actually is or what it means to be a person very often. So this is what life is actually. It's, you are brought into the world and you're the shittiest possible version of a human being. Like, you can't do anything as a human being. Like, when it comes to, are you good at being human or not, you suck.
Yeah.
You can't feed yourself, you can't even walk. Like, you've got nothing going for you, and so somebody has to take care of you. And the progression of childhood should be taking steps, in my opinion, should be taking steps to remedy that situation. And by roughly age 18, you should be able to take care of yourself. Now, it doesn't stop there, because now you used to be a really shitty human being. Now you've learned how to, like, pee in the right spot, and put on the right clothes in the right direction, and eat the right thing, and generally manage your time here on earth.
Hmm.
So now you can take care of yourself, but then you can be even better than that at being a human by taking care of others. So then you progress through the how do I take care of others in addition to myself, which is all a process of adopting responsibility, which is very painful, but is totally worth it in the long run. So that whole progression, if we're not moving along that track, that's when burnout happens, right?
Yeah.
Is I've been spending the last 3 years doing 40 plus hours a week of something that I'm in no way interested in. Well, like, and then you're like, "Ah, I don't know why I'm burnt out." I'm like, well,
Yeah.
like,
Well, that's why right there.
yeah, like I can tell you, like, I look at my life, I'm like 33 and live with my parents, and don't have any like sizable income to speak of. It's like, yeah, like if you're a little depressed and that's your situation, like no significant other prospects, I'm just grinding away on art and Web3. And if you don't have any other prospects, like, yeah, it makes sense to where your brain would be like, yo, dude, we need to get on the ball. Like, what's going on? And I've actually been using some of these burnout practices to delay the feeling of, oh my gosh, my life's horrible. Because really the reason my life sucks is because some bad things have happened to me. And it's just sometimes life hits you like a ton of bricks and you got to
Yeah.
figure it out. So that's fine. I don't complain about it. I make dark humor jokes about it, but I don't complain.
Tune into Wednesday golf streams to hear more of that.
Yeah, you'll hear all about my ex-wife. You
Oh
turn into
man.
mini golf.
Good
Good
stuff.
God. So anyway, that kind of destroys my train of thought. So that's all happening, and if we're seeing some degree of progress in an area, right? Like, it's the reason I started playing Rocket League and being like, I just need something that I can see steady growth at.
Yeah.
Um, that aids me in delaying the forced decision to where I don't make the decisions like I've made in the past, where I say, you know what, I'm sick of this, I quit, and we're gonna figure it out.
Right.
And that's actually a bad decision, right? That just leads to more burnout because now I'm grinding, trying just to survive, and that makes things way easier to burn out
Wait.
on because
Yeah.
you're like, why am I having to struggle so much? Well, it's probably because of a bad decision that you made. So learning how to not burn out means that you have to establish those boundaries and create those limits in your life so that you can make the right decision at the right time moving forward. Do you
Yep.
agree with that? Disagree with
Yeah,
that?
yeah, yeah. No,
Thoughts?
100%. And I think, yeah, so practically speaking, the way that I deal with that is like two ways. First of all, I'm a sucker for like a checklist. And so like if I make myself a checklist and I get to mark something off, it helps me
Mm,
do that thing. And so for me, like I literally keep a kettlebell like right by my desk right here so that I can while I'm working, I see my checklist over here on the wall on the whiteboard. I'm like, I haven't done my workout session. I'm going to stop what I'm doing right now, pick up this kettlebell. I'm going to do it so that I get to check that like whiteboard off on the wall. It's
yeah.
very basic, it's
So
very minimal, but like it's something that's addictive in my head that helps me unplug at least for 30 minutes.
that's incredibly interesting to me because I've heard this from a lot of people. They're like, I love having a checklist. I can just go and mark it off and be like, oh, that feels so good. That does
Yeah.
not work for me at all. I don't know
I believe
why.
it. I believe it.
I don't know
We're
why
pretty different.
I'm this way, but like if I check something off a checklist, like I don't get that relief that comes from it
Yeah.
because there's something about my brain where I'm like, yeah, this is off the list, but what about the rest of the list? Right.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I'm so I'm a sucker for checklists in a slightly different way. I like to make checklists that are so long that there's no humanly feasible way for me to do this in the allotted amount of time.
That's awesome. No, we're super
Horrible at making
different.
checklists.
This is why we co-host a show together because, yeah, we're not the same.
So the thing that I'll use my exercise routine as an example because you're talking about the kettlebells, right? Um, for me, I receive a much larger dopamine dump when I get to the end of a week, and I can look back and say I did what I said I was going to do.
Mhm.
So right now, what I'm doing for fitness, because I don't have time in my normal schedule, is people might think this is gross, but when I'm at work, uh, anytime I go into the restroom to use the bathroom, I do 15, 20 push-ups or
Awesome.
15, 20 squats or something like that. I try to switch it up so that I'm not hitting the same muscle groups all the time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But that's when I do my exercise. And so, I'm getting in 100 push-ups, 100 squats a day,
That's
just
awesome.
because you have to go biologically to the bathroom, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
because mostly because of Diet Coke. And so I'm getting my exercise that way. And at the end of the week, I go to shower or something and I see myself in the mirror. I'm like, oh, okay, like
Hey.
as a 33-year-old, maybe I'm not the fittest, but I'm also not fit.
Yeah,
So that's fantastic. And that feedback loop of a little bit longer period of time works very well for me.
yeah.
So the to continue my solution oriented approach, something that I highly recommend if you have the time to do it is to, well, actually, you'll have to make the time. Nobody has time. Everybody has the same amount of time. So figure it out.
Yeah.
Elon's doing what he's doing with his time, and you're, a friggin'
Watching the
cash
show.
register or whatever. You know, you're not a cash register. You're the person who works the cash
Yeah.
register. But like, there's levels to this, right? So, my biggest recommendation when people are like, my life is chaos and I don't know how to control it, is make a schedule and stick to it. I
Hmm.
don't care if that schedule says at 6 p.m. I'm stopping what I'm doing and I'm cooking and eating, and
Yeah.
that's all that it says.
Yep.
Start with one thing. That's fine. You
Yeah.
suck. Remember, you're not a great person yet. The whole thing is trying to get better steadily over time, which is why we're talking about this in the Web3 space to begin with, is because we're believers in DCA, right?
Yep.
If you're dollar cost average more than your portfolio, dollar cost average your health, dollar cost average your skill set, dollar cost average your relationships. It applies to everything. Dollar cost average your haircuts. Okay. You see, I just got a haircut last week or a week before last, looking super moppy. I have to DCA my haircut better, right? Because
Yep.
I'm not doing it frequently enough. And as you build that schedule out, what you'll start to notice is that there's this like exuberance that comes from that, because now you're not an NPC anymore. You're not a
Hmm.
non-player character in the video game that gives other people side quests and then relies on them for your happiness, right? And then you have to give them 200 gold and 20,000 XP. Like, that's bullshit. Don't do that. You want to be the hero. You want to be the main character. And in order to be the main character, you have to be the one telling the story. If you don't know what story you're telling, you're failing at that.
Yeah.
Sorry, I got a little preachy
No,
there for some
that was
reason.
a great that was a great rant. I highly appreciate it. And yeah, DCA your life is something that I've really just clung to in the last like 5 years to help me stay on the right track. And I think that like another big thing is adding incentives, right? And so for me,
Mm,
I love being on Twitter. And so whenever like, that dopamine hit comes, it's great. But like I find that I am stay in the most shape when I have my streak going and I'm talking about it publicly and people know about it. And when I don't post about it, people ask like, "Yo, you doing the DCA, like you lifting the
mm,
weights kind of thing?" And that prompts me to get back into it. Another thing that I think that people in Web3 need to really dive into is being like multi-interest. Okay, so I
mm.
started and you started with Web3 and NFTs as a hobby, right? Like it's something that you just got into on the side and now it consumes our lives. If you're watching this show, Web3 consumes your life without a doubt. So
Help
it's not
me.
a yeah, it's not a hobby anymore in that particular sense. Like a hobby is something that you do to be able to unplug, to be able to breathe, to be able to feel refreshed.
Mhm.
And if Web3 isn't making you feel that way, get another hobby. Okay. And like
Yeah,
when I talk about, and I think that people should talk about it on Twitter. I try and talk about disc golf or sports or whatever on Twitter. And I know that y'all don't really care when I post about sports or disc golf. But to me, it's showing everybody else, hey, yeah, I'm this Web3 guy that's been in this forever. Yes, I hustle a ridiculous amount, but I'm also trying to be healthy and do something different. And I want y'all to know about it because it helps me to be able to say, I'm telling them that I'm unplugging. So I'm going to just go unplug. They know that I'm not here. I'm going to go play my golf and it's going to be great. And then I legitimately feel happy when I get back and I'm like, people saying, oh, dude, the weather looks great. Like maybe I should go touch some grass, That feels
yeah.
good to me. And I think more people, if you do that, it not just only makes yourself feel better, but it helps encourage other people to go out and have a more healthy life too.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And there's, so I'm obviously a big conservationist. Um,
Well, you say obviously, I know that. And
Oh,
sometimes
okay.
you talk about it, but I mean, it's worth mentioning on the show that you did spend a long time like doing
No,
that kind of
I
thing.
appreciate that. So the story goes like this. My ex-wife ruined our marriage and I was trying to hold it together. And so we moved around the country doing conservation work. Well, she dragged me around the country doing conservation work, but I actually really enjoyed doing the work. And I've built many a, observation deck for a bird sanctuary and that sort of thing. And note this is conservation versus preservation. We can talk about the difference at a different time. But I'm a big conservationist, and I'm not an environmentalist. I don't care if your dog gets sick. Things happen, deal with it. But um, like I'm not one of those people that's super uh, kitschy about conservation. Nature's horrific, and
Yeah.
nature's trying to kill you all of the time. So, but I think that there's also something primal and natural about it, right? We call it nature. It's a natural thing, and I think a lot of people actually neglect to realize that they're in nature right now. Wherever you are, you're in nature.
Hmm. Yeah. Good point.
We've built structures and things to protect us from the harshness of nature, but it's still all around you, right? Even if it's concrete's made with rocks and water, right? Like
Yeah.
it's
Nature.
and silica. But regardless of the chemistry of concrete, these things are all natural to the planet, and there's something really special about getting into nature. I don't like the term touch grass
Mm.
because grass is so sanitized. It's so
Yeah.
clean.
Yep.
What you should do is actually touch trees.
Yeah.
Trees are the big thing that you want to touch. And the reason that I say that is because it's one of my rituals that I don't do anymore right now. Because speaking of burnt out, I definitely got burnt out on hiking trails. It becomes very difficult to go hiking when you're like, oh, that water feature is clearly broken and needs to be fixed, and
Yeah.
like, oh, they cut down this tree even though they could have just gone around it, or like when you're seeing all of that stuff, it becomes a little difficult, right? Curse of knowledge.
Hmm. Yep.
Um, but one of my favorite things is to go walk down a trail and just use one of my hands to touch the trees as I'm walking past them. And it ends up becoming, if you practice it, it ends up becoming akin to prayer in an interesting way. And sorry if I'm offending anybody, but I like to play with words. This is prayer to me. You can think of prayer however you want. Um, and walking through that and actually connecting with those trees. One, there's actually some phenomenological feature between that uh, there's electrical impulses that happen between you and
Yeah.
trees that are I think are very healthy. I'm not a crystal person, but I do think that this has a positive effect. The color green is very soothing to the human mind. You also can't work while you're walking through the woods,
Hmm.
and that's a big thing. Is it ends up becoming a mindfulness practice. So, in my opinion, Rupert Sheldrake is a wonderful author. There's a bunch of conservationists who have done some phenomenal literature about these topics. Highly recommend going and checking them out. I'll have to dig into my library and remember some of the authors that I highly recommend, but definitely worth looking into. And maybe that becomes the hobby as well, right?
Yeah.
Um, because fishing, hunting,
Disc
disc
golf.
golf, um, yeah, you don't necessarily have to kill anything. Um,
Yeah.
though it might be a good practice for you. Going out and doing all of those things is what your human entity is supposed to do. It's what you were designed to do by nature, and uh, while it is a wonderful thing to be grateful for all the incredible technologies and everything we have, and obviously I'm one of those people, right? I'm involved in this space. I love tech. It's incredibly interesting to me, and but I'm still just a biological human.
Hmm.
I need certain things. And this, like you were talking about eating. I hate eating.
Yeah.
Eating
Me
is my
too.
least favorite activity. I would rather, well, I can't say any of that, but there are a lot of things I would rather do
It's
than,
not mini golf, bro.
yeah, I'm not talking about mini golf. There are a bunch of things that I would rather do than eat. And I can't run mech warrior without fuel. So
Yeah,
makes
totally.
me angry, but I have to do it. So that's some of my strategy about trying not to burn out, is building that sustainable lifestyle, getting out and being with. That's actually interesting because it's not getting out and being with nature. Um, yeah, so Rocket League is definitely a hobby of mine. That's not the best hobby for people who don't want to hurt on the inside, uh,
But
because
it's
Rocket
not
League will
crypto.
definitely. It's
It's
not
not
crypto,
crypto.
and it is something that I see natural progress on. So that's actually why I started doing that so much, and it also helped to teach me how to edit videos and stuff. So, but when it comes to nature, it's not about being with nature. It's actually about being with yourself, and nature
Mhm.
just facilitates that really well. So if you can, if you're not a bug person, you don't like bugs around you, that's fine. I understand that flying creatures creep me out, but you definitely need to sit down and just be alone with your own thoughts. Journaling works as well. Do you journal personally, John?
So I don't. I've always tried to journal, but I end up like it's more. I write short poems and like
Hmm.
doodles and stuff like that, and call it journaling. So
Okay,
yeah.
so let me ask you about this, because we've got some time, so I'm gonna keep rambling with stream of consciousness here. So when you journal, is that a brain dump for you? What is the actual like mechanism of action for you journaling?
Usually it's emotional processing.
Okay, cool. So, while we're talking about burnout, we do all of this stuff, and in order to be able to accomplish great things and do all of the cool stuff that we're working on, you have to push all of everything to the background, right? And it
Yes.
goes in the dumpster in the back where things are processed, is the way
Yep.
that I think about it, right? And I do this really badly because I don't like to. Yeah, what's up, Paul? I don't like to actually process my emotions. I'd rather not deal with them,
Mhm.
which is why showers are so difficult.
Just get
You get in the
lost in there
shower and your
forever.
brain's like, "Oh, okay, we got to deal with it now." Um,
Yeah.
but so you use journaling to process, and process is an interesting word here, right? Because what I use journaling for is to organize my thoughts.
Mm.
Um, and to effectively push things to the background. Doesn't mean that they don't get processed. It just means that I don't have to have them in my frontal lobe right now at this moment.
Right.
I have notes on my phone, right? So I give you a perfect example. Yesterday, I was obsessing over something, and was unable to do simple household chores. So I pull up my phone. I have a little, you can't really see it, but I have a little notes thing on here that's just a to-do list, and everything goes on this to-do list. Write a piece of Write a piece on the involvement of obsession in today's tech-heavy society. Like, okay, so I'm sitting trying to do chores like laundry and sweep and that kind of stuff, and my brain will not leave this topic alone. um, there's something about obsession that is relevant, and it's actually a skill set today in our
Yeah.
society, because
Yes.
if you can't learn how to obsess over something, you're not going to be a high performer. You're going to be a normal average Joe, and there's nothing wrong with that if you're into that sort of thing, but that's what's going to be the case. And that's not what I'm aiming for. I want to make something really cool that when I die, I can be like, yeah, but I was styled pigeon. Um, and people, not about fame, but people know who I am because I offered that much value via this packaging of information that I'm working on to relay values and things. So that's important to me, and so grinding on that feels fulfilling. Whereas trying to sell Nexiclon XR, the new uh, once a day oral clonidine for hypertension. Um, it is still my job. That's less intriguing to me, even though it helps a lot. It's still what it is. So anyway, I've been rambling enough. Tell me, in addition to journaling, you have a support system, but then there's also this whole thing about self care. How do
Mm.
you define self care, and how do you go about adding it into your very structured existence?
Yeah. Very structured is becoming less structured, I might mention, as my wife is pregnant and I'm taking over all of the everything that happens in my house. But so yeah, I'm dealing with that now. But in terms for me, like self-care is just ultra simple stuff. Like I encourage my wife to go hang out with her sister. And so I actually get time at the house to literally just sit and smoke by myself and put on a vinyl and like be able to just listen and I put my phone in another room, and I like to actively listen to music. I post about this on Twitter fairly often because it's
Mm,
important to me. But I
hmm
think that there's a lot of people encourage meditation, and I've practiced actual meditation where you sit and just try and clear your mind for however long the incense stick is burning. But I think that in today's society, like actively listen to music is probably more effective as a meditation than what the sitting and trying to clear your mind, because listening to music actively isn't just putting music on and doing something else. It's sitting down and it is turning on the music, and it is allowing yourself to experience the emotions and the creativity of another human being and try to understand what they're trying to tell you through this universal language that anybody can understand. And that
mm.
puts your mind in a different place, for me at least, than when I'm working or being creative or whatever, because it opens it quiets my mind, right? Like meditation does. And then it also allows this new information to come in. And that's another way that I like to emotionally process things, because I'm like, hey, I've never thought about this particular emotion, even if it's not lyrical, like they're not singing words, right? Sometimes
Mm.
it's that way, but oftentimes it's just instrumental music where I'm like, wow, I can hear them breathe in this particular way, or this particular melody is hitting me in a certain way. And I think that's something that just a lot of people, a lot more people, especially in the crypto space, should do, because it helps quiet the noise that's in our head all the time of thinking about, X, Y, and Z.
So for me, I don't do music that way, because of technical training, right? I let
Hmm.
technical training get in the way of that. Um, just because the way that I was taught to listen to music, right? You were taught the same thing I was, and then you took it further. I didn't end up going further,
Right.
um, because I just abandoned the practice essentially. So for me, that actually comes from dance. And
Hmm.
I went to a blues dance recently. Ramona actually dragged me out, and I also dragged out Ramona. So Ramona, my
It
younger
works.
sister, and I are both the same way. We're like, no, I don't want to go out. Like, I want to stay in my little hole and my hobbit hole and
Yep.
brush the hair on my feet. But um, that's not best. So we dragged each other out to this blues dance, something that we're both actually quite good at. And it was an absolute blast. And the feeling that I had afterwards was exactly the feeling of processed emotion.
Hmm.
Dancing is something that I've done with all of my exes and in all of the same rough spaces. So
Hmm.
believe it or not, it's all still mostly the same people that blues dance that used to dance back when I was going 3 times a week.
Right.
And actually, oh God. So I'm super excited to get back into this hobby of dance and everything. And then come to find out, one of my involvements of the past is teaching the next lesson at the blues dance.
Oh,
And I was
damn.
like, this is exactly why I waited for like 5 years to go back,
Yeah.
is because I was hoping it'd be different people. So now I have to deal with that awkwardness, which is good social practice. So I'm embracing it, not rejecting it. But um, having something that does that is so unbelievably helpful. I can't express how moving to music uh, exhausts my pent up emotion.
Yeah.
And so I'm leaving this dance that Friday night late, and I have this feeling of having had a good cry.
Hmm.
Is
Yeah.
that the same thing that you get from
Yes.
music? Yeah.
100% it
Okay.
is. Yeah.
So that emotional venting, where you're just like, okay, we're going to turn on the vent, and I'm just going to express myself however I want to,
Yes.
and experience that expression. And afterwards, I feel like refreshed and renewed in a sense, and that will make grinding way easier if you can find
Hmm.
whatever that thing is for you.
Yeah.
Um,
I think
Highly
that's the point.
recommend doing some self exploration. Know
Yeah.
thyself, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the point. Like whether it's dance, whether it's music, whether it's disc golf, like Fibo, our good buddy that we mini golf with weekly. He's a great disc golfer, and that's how he unplugs. It's not going to look the same for everybody. It's going to be different. And so I think if you're listening to this and maybe you don't identify with actively listening to music or dancing, but there is something for you out there that will let you experience that emotional release. That's not crypto, that's not work, that helps you unplug, and you just need to find it. And maybe a part of finding that is talking about it in public. Like I talk about disc golf in public, and I found some disc golf friends. And so, now I see them post on Twitter, and I'm like, oh man, I haven't been for a week. I need to get out and disc golf. Right. So, um,
100%.
yeah, I think so. We're getting close to wrapping up time. I think that really the most important part of this is just allowing yourself to be influenced by others and making sure that the other people that are influencing you like have their own best interests in mind, like they're trying to be healthy humans,
Mm,
because that will help you also be a healthy human, you know?
yeah.
And I think I would love to see more people do episodes like this. Like I want to hear from other people what they do and how they unplug and, what's helpful, because we're all in this together. This is all new, it's not like
Yeah.
there's experts in this field. There's not. We're all in this together, and we all need to help each other survive, because the more healthy we are, the better that Web3 is going to be faster.
Right. And it's also really important, the term degen is an identity issue for me,
Yeah.
because I actually prefer the term outlaw, personally. I like
Mhm.
the idealistic nature of the outlaw, as opposed to a degen. Degen is just an internet term for outlaw, right?
Yeah, I think so.
But I feel like outlaw actually gets at the core of what we're looking for, because degen has this quality of like, I've got trash all over my bedroom
Yeah.
to it, and that's not good. Stop doing that to yourself. Have some self-respect. Be styled, okay?
Mhm.
Um, don't. That's what the whole styled pigeon thing is about, right? Is self-respect. Respect yourself enough to know that you deserve better. If you're living in a trash heap, stop. Uh, you shouldn't do that.
You're
Deep down,
capable of being better. Yeah.
yeah, you can. I promise. And I might get emotional saying this, but there's a resistance in our current society to you doing well,
Mhm.
because by doing well, you're trying to gain this Marxist power and become the oppressor. And let me tell you right now that that's all bullshit. One, two, it's okay to be a good person. It's okay to be strong. It's okay to be powerful. It's important that we have powerful people in our society. Okay,
Mhm.
because if you're not powerful, somebody else is going to be powerful. And I don't trust them as much as I trust me to be relatively moral.
Yeah.
Okay. So gain the power, gain the strength, become competent in yourself and in so much as you can. And I promise it will pay off. Um, there's there's no reason you can't um, sorry, I'm reading comments. There's no reason you can't become that next level person, and being that next level person will really feel a lot better than you feel right now.
Yeah.
So I encourage you to have the courage to endeavor to be better,
Yeah.
dare to grow.
Yeah, that's exactly why I wanted to do this episode. Like, first of all, it's a little intimidating, speaking for myself, to pop onto a live stream and put our feelings out onto the internet, because we're men and men don't typically do that. You know what I mean? But I think that it's important to do this, and I think that other people need to hear exactly what you just said. I mean, I'm inspired to be a stronger person. I want to go out and do stuff right after this to
Yeah, no,
be
I'm gonna have
able
to
to
lift some weights after we
unplug.
get done.
Yeah, exactly, exactly, and
And
that's
eat.
good. That's good. Yeah, and eat. I got to do that too. But so yeah, I mean, that's exactly. If I'm getting those feelings, I'm hoping that other people that are listening to the episode are getting the feelings too, and more of this propagates throughout the Web3 space, because, like I said, we'll get better and we'll be better. And like people think like we're young, we're not young anymore. We're not the young whippersnappers. We're the people that need to be setting the example, and we're going to make the next economy, and we're going to be the next leaders. And so let's be good ones. Let's be strong ones. It's up to us.
Yeah, 100% agree. And sorry, everybody, if this is one of those episodes where you're going, I thought that we were going to be talking about crypto. We are talking about crypto.
We are,
It's
yeah.
just,
If you don't realize that yet, you got some
yeah,
learning to do.
exactly, exactly. And we're just turning up the frame rate or the resolution a little bit to look at not just crypto, but crypto and its feeders that stretch out into everything else as you learn about decentralization and the philosophy behind Bitcoin, and hopefully the rest of the crypto space in general, though maybe there's some spots where that deviates.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you letting me rant so much, and it's always a pleasure getting to talk about the high level stuff. I hope we're still bringing value. and giving you maybe some direction or some at least stimulating thought on how to engage with the space without being completely crushed by the fact that it moves at a really rapid pace.
Yeah.
It's okay. Keep holding on and keep, making sure you get out there and take care of yourself and build yourself along with building things in the space. And I think we're in a good spot.
Yeah, 100% agreed. And hey, if you need any support, like me and Pigeon are on Twitter, tweet at us. Tell us what you're doing. Tell us how you touch trees or what hobbies you're getting into to help unplug. I'd love to hear about it myself. So,
Same.
yeah. In the meantime, we will be back in 2 weeks' time. We're going to have some guests on soon. I'm really excited to keep digging in, man. And then, for the rest of the weekend, I hope everyone unplugs and is able to rest and hit it hard on Monday.
Sweet. Play
Cool,
us
man.
out.
Thanks.